Hello everyone, welcome to our first online class of two. Tomorrow's will also be an online class. I hope this is helpful. I hope that this is convenient for you and you're able to do it. Obviously this will be your attendance as well as your assignments for both Monday and Tuesday. That'll be due midnight. Per your suggestions, we're switching it to midnight, so that's when the deadlines will be for the rest of the semester. I just wanted to say hi before I jump in. We're going to present and be full screen, so you won't be able to see me anymore. So we're going to talk about visual rhetoric. This is kind of a follow-up class from our last class when we did some analysis, summary versus analysis of some very strange paintings, if you recall. We're not going to see anything quite so repulsive. I shouldn't say, classic art is repulsive. We're not going to see anything quite so drastic as those. We will see some things that prompt social movement, and you want to, change things, and that's what we're talking about, visual rhetoric. So just a preface here, why it's important to learn about visual rhetoric. Why are we discussing this in a writing and rhetoric class? Among the most valuable skills that you can take with you from college is the ability to think critically. That's honestly, I think, part of the main purpose of college. Is not that you're going to be trained for your software job or trained for your business job specifically, but it's that you're going to learn how to think better thoughts. That's basically it. And so visual rhetoric plays into that really, really well. Thinking critically requires careful attention, beyond surface level attention, to the way or how, right, analysis, something works, how all of its parts add up to something meaningful and important, to understand what it's doing and how it does it. So it goes beyond the surface level to a deeper, more nuanced perspective. And so that perspective is going to be illuminated by your reading and analysis of a text. So it's important to come to a perspective on the images that we're going to analyze that a reader or a viewer wouldn't come to on their own, at least not initially. So we're kind of thinking deep thinking here. So that said, we're going to analyze a few, well, I guess we've already done textual analysis, so we're going to do what's called multimodal, multi being, many, modals being different modes. So we're going to analyze texts that utilize image. We did this a little bit last class, but we're going to do it again. And this is a big part of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the semester, preparing for the final, the different assignments. So let's dive right in. You're going to have a rush write, and this is the way that you're going to do it. It's going to be all electronic. Obviously, I don't want you to write something out by hand. If you're opposed to typing and you really do want to, I suppose you can, but you'll just have to submit a picture, so you have to snap a photo. But other than that, you'll create a document, Word doc or Google Doc or whatever. Don't do it in Pages, please. But do a Word doc format, and then you put your name, so in standard MLA header, rush write, and then this is the rush write we're doing. So you're going to do a summary of the image I'm about to show you and an analysis. This is the money maker here. You have to summarize to be able to analyze, but this is really the deep thinking. If it comes easy, it's probably not analysis, or you're just awesome, and you're all awesome anyway, but we want to think more awesome thoughts. So this is the way this assignment will work. You're only going to submit one document, so the top is going to be your rush write, the bottom is going to be your homework, which will come in a minute, and you'll submit this assignment by midnight tonight, which is Monday the 25th, and so I won't accept it after that, so please do that on time, and you're going to write a paragraph of summary and paragraph of analysis for this image, and I'll just expect you guys to pause here. So analyze what this photo is doing and how it gets you to feel what you feel. Okay, set a timer for 7 minutes. We're going to move on. And I do know what 5 to 7 minutes of writing looks like. I've graded tons of your rush writes, so I know if you do 2 minutes, I'll know that you didn't do the full time. So please do the full time. So I've kind of asked you to do something we haven't really been trained to do, to analyze this rhetorically. We haven't actually talked about principles of visual rhetoric, and so this is in some senses an unproven method, and we're actually going to talk about how to analyze visual rhetoric today. So the principles we're obviously reviewing grape, genre, rhetoric, audience, purpose, exigence, and kairos. Those are important, so you will want to think about the audience.
Daddy, I want to go potty.
You need to go potty?
Yeah.
Where's Mommy?
Mommy's downstairs talking down. That's some stuff. And I want to read some books, lots of books, but I can't because I can't. I have to read 2 books.
Really? Do you want to say hello again?
Hello. I need to go potty. I got books.
Okay, maybe this is your 7-minute timer. I'm going to take her to go potty, and I'm pretty sure that if I pause my screen recording, it stops it. So, sorry, I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Do your rush right, or just analyze this image. Go. What did you do, Steph? Okay, you gotta be quiet though, okay? Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. Apologies, I'm back. This is like the least professional recording ever, I know. But look, you got to see Ava, and she's adorable, huh? Okay, you can read your books.
I'm reading my books.
Okay. Alright, so you've analyzed that. So we're going to talk principles, right? So you will want to keep in mind who your audience is, right? Who's the intended audience? What genre is this image in? What's its purpose? Those will come into play. They're not the principles we're going to be discussing today. This is just a little bit of review of that. Crap. So this is an unfortunately memorable acronym for principles we're going to learn today. The third acronym, you don't have to remember these acronyms really if you don't want, although you will remember crap whether or not you want to or not. So crap, bumpy, these are the things we're about to cover. So visual rhetoric, we talked about that. It's an image that makes an argument, right? Rhetoric is the art of persuasion. It's using the available means of persuasion. It's the good man speaking well. So visual literacy, textual literacy is being able to read a text. Visual literacy is being able to read an image. So you're able to look at an image and understand what it's doing rhetorically and how it's doing it. So we have to understand visual grammar, which brings us back to these principles, right? Crap and bumpy we're going to talk about. This is the grammar we're going to be using. You don't have to do this. I was going to do this. You don't have to write down your response. So this is the CRAP acronym. Contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Contrast, a lot of times all of these do something to emphasize, right? So you'll see there's a lot of overlap, but these are terms that you should be able to use effectively. So when you have two things of starkly different colors, tones, and values, or size and shape or direction, then those are going to emphasize a difference. They're going to emphasize distance between two things, the types or the functionalities of groups, right? Repetition is extremely aesthetically pleasing when it's done well. So you can strategically repeat something to create a pattern, and that pattern can convey meaning. It can convey, or a lack of pattern can convey disorder, right? It can convey chaos. So this idea of repetition, alignment. Alignment is the same, right? It's visually appealing when it's done well. However, you can deviate from that. If you have a rhetorical purpose to say there's a misaligned social problem, then you can misalign your image. And if you do it creatively and effectively, then it conveys that visually. Proximity is the relative distance, the relative closeness of two objects, two elements in an image. Right, so bringing them close together indicates closeness in the principles that they're exemplifying, or there's lots of different ways you can spin it. But these are 4 principles as crap, right? So contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity. These are things that you guys need to be able to discuss, and not that there's any tried and true forever, through and through meaning that proximity always means this, but you can argue that because these things are close, the image is suggesting something about them, right? It's grouping them. So you just need to be able to argue with these things and interpret, think critically about these types of elements. So contrast, we talked a little bit about this. In fact, I kind of just went over all of this. So contrast is going to emphasize something, or emphasize the difference between something by starkly different colors or shapes, and they're usually juxtaposed. Juxtaposed is a good word to know in college. It means that two things are very, very close or on top of each other. So the juxtaposition of this and that creates a stark contrast that indicates the difference between those elements, right? It's bringing the viewer to understand how different they are rather than how similar they are, right? So that would be an argument you could make using contrast. Repetition. This is another part of Bumpy. This is a really interesting image. There's a lot of things going on, right? You could talk about how this ball has replaced the croquet ball with its white stripe, has replaced the pattern here, right? The spotted pattern. It's interesting that her right shoulder is in front of the spots, whereas her dress down here is not. So she's kind of in between the pattern, right? So she's living in this liminal space. She's neither in front nor fully behind. It's visually appealing, right? The fact that it seems to go over so well, and even though she's in the middle, the pattern, the repetition still holds true. So there's lots of different arguments you can make and different things you can point out in saying that this image is conveying meaning. And what argument is this saying, especially if it was paired with a logo for a business, say Target, alignment. This one's arguing that a break in alignment creates focal point. It gives you something to look at. You didn't look at this for any extended period of time. In fact, you probably didn't read it. Once you read the first one, any of these, you knew what all of them said, and your eyes went immediately to here. Not aligned. So it's directing the reader's attention. The first thing that this image is going to point out is a failure of alignment, not alignment itself. And that could be an argument you make, right? So proximity, another principle here. This is kind of a fun image. This, and you could argue about what this is doing, but the fact that it's not close to anything else, right? This is all kind of white or blank space. This isn't occupied by anything. So you've got the focal point here in the center. The majority of why is the guitar cut off? That's interesting. Why didn't they put the whole thing? Well, your focal point here is hopscotch, right? And then you've got all of these different elements that look like leaves. Some kind of nature, holistic, natural music, right? So maybe it's a coming together. Hopscotch is a childish word, right? So bringing out your inner child, how these things are all very close together rather than being sporadically. They could have put 100 different guitars all over the place, but they didn't. They chose to put one guitar, cut half off with this hopscotch in the center here. So you make lots of arguments about that. It's also a pretty cool flyer. The other acronym, Bumpy, is exemplified. There's a lot going on in Starry Night. This is a wildly famous painting. I'm not going to have you analyze it because there's probably 50,000 different analyses of this online, and I don't want you to just piggyback. I want original thoughts. And there's not really, well, there is probably, you know, more right and more wrong, but with interpretation, with what we're getting at, you're just making an argument about what the photo, what the image is doing. So with balance, unity, movement, proportion, emphasis, these are the things that are in this acronym. You could argue movement, right? So this has got a lot of movement. You're moving from left to right through the swirls in the sky. You're moving concentrically from the outside of the circle inward, or you could argue that you're moving outward, right, from these circles. You're moving upward. You know, this has got a ton of movement. As far as unity goes, you could talk about the brush strokes and how they unify the sky, whereas the brush strokes are very different down here. And so that the sky is united, yet the world below is not. I don't know. There's a bunch of different things you could say about this. Balance. So an image generally, to be visually appealing, should be balanced, but you can deviate a little and still have it work. This image with unbalanced in it, it doesn't cut the circle in half like it might have. It doesn't cut the word in half like it might have, like you would expect a balanced image to do. But it still achieves that balance. It's interesting because it's not an equally weighted image, and so it's making an argument both with the word it's saying as well as with the image itself. And so that's kind of fun. Movement, we talked about that with Starry Night. This is just the close cropping, the close grouping of triangles on top of triangles, but these ones get big. These ones are very big and very close, and then they fade in a relatively linear movement out and onward until we get to a single point out here. So you could argue that this is moving toward the viewer, right? Toward and to the left. Or you could argue that this is whisking away and that the viewer's eyes start here and then go into oblivion. They follow this movement, right? But it's an optical track that the image encourages the reader to follow, right? It's like a roadmap, like start here and go away. Proportion. So proportion is just relative size. If there's something big and something small, and they're close together, then that's saying something. You can make a lot of arguments about what this image is doing. And this is almost just text, but it's breaking the conventions of text, and it's more of an image than it is just text. So you could argue about the size of stay as opposed to the repetition and movement fading away of go. There's lots that could be said there that would be kind of fun. Emphasis. So emphasis to me doesn't seem so much like a principle, so much as like an umbrella principle. So you've got so much going on in this. The birds are facing opposite direction. That creates a contrast in direction. These birds are up. This bird is not up. His beak is more level. That's interesting. What's that saying? They're contrasting there. The colors are obviously contrasting. The balance, if you cut this image in half, it is totally unbalanced. There's more on the left than on the right. It's not equally weighted. So what is that saying about this bird? What is that saying about being different? What is it saying that this bird's darker shade, that you've got white and then an off-white, so you've got dark on the right and light on the left. Well, I guess that actually lines up with all of the birds, so don't mention that. I haven't analyzed this in great depth except just now. So you can make arguments as to this is a standalone campaign, or you can make arguments that that purity, right? If you were to argue, go back to, did we touch on this? Where are we? Oh, we haven't hit it yet. Sorry. We're going to talk about colors in just a second and the meaning of different colors. So you could talk about what white means as opposed to this grayish, blackish color, and the emotions that conveys, and why is white standing alone, whereas these guys are grouped closer together and standing afar from, or together, as opposed to white. So you can talk about the argument that this image is making. Well, here's the colors. This is what I was looking for. So this is good. Like, you might want to refer back to this during your analyses. And you've got access to this video. I can also send out the slides if you want those by themselves. But you could talk about if there's green in a photo and it's largely green, then you could talk about how green indicates peace, whereas red indicates excitement and movement and passion, or violence or whatever, right? You can make arguments based on the colors, because none of the colors in this image are accidental. They're all deliberate. It's especially that way in in graphic design, where it's not just a photograph and some of the colors are happenstance. But even in photographs, you emphasize certain things. You give it the temperature, give the photo a temperature and different effects. So the last one that's not part of the acronym, but that's another good way to argue, is the frame. So in this image up here, your focal point is right here. It's the center quadrant almost always. And so what happens when that center quadrant moves up to the sky? Well, if the main focal point of the image is not in the center quadrant, then you can argue something about that. I guess you can if it's in center too, but that's the traditional place for it. So if you've got something going on in a photo like this, and it's down here and to the left, then that's strange. That's the image is overlooking the action, right? If you've got something in the sky going on over here, but the sky is only, 3/4 of the top right quadrant, and that's where the focal point of the image is, then that's strange. Why is it the image giving all of the good prime real estate to something that's not the focus? You could say, it's an overlooked thing. You could say it's arguing, this image with this thing over here is arguing that that we as society don't give adequate weight. We don't give center stage. It's a peripheral thing, if whatever's happening in the top right of that image. So there's arguments you can make based on frame, perspective. So we're obviously not going to have you share with a neighbor, but just look. I'll give you just a second to look at the image we're about to look at. We're going to look at just one, and then we'll have a repetition of that weird bird one with the birds on it. I was just repositioning here, Ava. And so you're going to be thinking about the genre, who's the writer here, who's the audience, what's the purpose of this image, and then whether or not it's effective. And you're going to be thinking, if it is or isn't effective, how did they use the design principles, Craft and Bumpy, to be effective? So this is the image. Just think about it for 10 seconds. Take it in.
Who's that?
That's Spider-Man.
Can I watch that movie?
No, we're not going to watch a movie tonight. It's too late. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this image.
Is that Spider-Man?
Yeah, it is.
Who's that?
Hold on just a sec. I've got to finish this. I'm almost done with the video.
That's Spider-Man.
Okay, so on the left, you've got... I don't know about you guys, but my eyes immediately go to Spider-Man's face. He's basically center quadrant. He's more center quadrant than anything else is. He's the biggest. You can totally see the superhero vibes. So if we were going to summarize this, you're going to say, superhero has his left arm bridging a gap between on the right shoulder of another superhero in training, right? And that they've got they're foregrounded with the city in the background. Looks like it's going on a sunset. And then you've got the words across the top of the image. Ava, I've got to finish this, okay?
Spider-Man?
Yes. We'll talk about it more after, okay? And so you got the words up across the top. Everything you say and do creates an impact. That's a summary, right? They're dressed in their superhero garb. They take up most of the image. So if you were going to move into analysis, you could argue that obviously most of the image is taken up by the superheroes, by the agents, let's call them, the people doing the acting. Nobody else in the photo. There's no other people in the image. All there is things, constructions, right? Buildings, a city, a sunset. So there's only two actors in the photo, and that's significant. You could say this is about agency. This is about the use of agency, because the focus of the photo is two actors, right? Two people who have agency and who have arguably really substantial influence. And then the idea that the gap between people is bridged by a reassuring arm. That's interesting. Why is it that's what unites these two people physically in the image, right? That's what bridges the viewer from one to the other, is this reassuring arm of mentorship. That's underlining, literally and metaphorically, the fact that everything you say and do creates an impact. So you could say that this image is arguing both visually, through visual rhetoric, that mentorship is the right impact to make, right? That this reassuring arm on the shoulder of someone younger, someone up and coming, is the proper impact, right? That's an argument that you could make. It's also interesting that it's done at sunset, right? So it's like after all of the superhero antics, after all of the ups and downs and the fights and the goods and the bads, the end of the day message is everything you do, say and do creates an impact, right? So it's not about saving the city, it's about saving the person. It's about saving the individual. It's about mentoring. It's about connecting with another individual. And you could talk about the contrast, the clarity of the people, and the pale fading away of the city, kind of the golden city, right? So there's different arguments you can make using I'm not going to go back, using crap, right? So contrast. You could talk about repetition. I don't know that there's a lot of beneficial use of repetition in this photo. Not that I'm seeing immediately, but you could talk about the different principles that we're talking about to analyze this photo, to launch an argument, whatever argument you want, and how they're using those things. Thought about analyzing this one, but we talked pretty heavily about it. So your assignment for tonight, Monday, if you're watching this on Monday, is the following. So that same document that you used for your rush write, this will be posted below that. So you only turn in one document today, and it's a 250 word, it's just a double-spaced page analysis of the following image that I'm about to show you. It should identify at least 3 principles of design to accomplish a rhetorical purpose. Right? So you're analyzing that an image is arguing something through these. You could talk about balance in the photo. You could talk about unity. You could talk about emphasis. You have to use 3 of these in your analysis. That's what I'm going to grade you on. Right? I'm not going to grade you on whether or not I agree with your analysis, but I am going to grade you if you don't mention repetition, proportion, and movement, or another 3 of these, then you're going to lose points. So make sure you're doing that. We're trying to learn the grammar, and the only way to learn it is to practice it. So use these things. Contrast might be a really nice one for this image, and what that does. So, and remember, you're looking for in-depth analysis, something that's not available on a surface level read, on a surface level viewing. Summary, you have to summarize to be able to analyze, but it shouldn't take up more than a quarter of your paper. If most of your paper is summary and then you have 2 lines of analysis and you throw 3 of these words in 2 sentences, that's not great, right? So that your grade will hurt a little there. So don't do that. Here's a hypothetical example. I talk about movement in this, right? So this is moving from summary, which is and this is not based on anything, but the diminishing size of the boy's reflection in the water, right? So that's summary, right? I'm telling you that there's a boy who's reflecting in the water, and his reflection is small. It's getting smaller. Creates, this is analysis. Oh, whoops, sorry, that's the image you're analyzing. That it creates a sense of movement for the viewer, indicating a fading away, and this is more analysis, right? This is my argument. It's indicating a fading away of childhood and an increasing distance from his past identity. And then more summary, right? The pale sky, that's summary. This is analysis. Complicates this by suggesting that whatever I argue. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, you can go ahead and email me. I'm sending this out Saturday night, so hopefully you have enough time to email with questions and I can get back to you. Remember that Monday night, tonight, if you're watching it on Monday, you have 2 assignments due. One is the reflection on the conference paper. That's I can't remember look up the criteria for it. I don't want to misquote myself here, but so that, and then this document with your rush write and your homework analysis right here. So here's the image. Go ahead and pause the video because I'm going to end it so it's not unnecessarily long. Take the time it takes to write a 250 word analysis of this, and then go ahead and submit it. Thank you guys. I hope this is helpful. I hope that the principles we cover here today really launch us and set us well for Unit 3. Have a happy evening, and I guess I will send out another video tomorrow.